Sometime in the first half of the 20th century, Joseph Tomanek made this lovely painting which you see, titled Nymphs Dancing to Pan's Flute, although I've also seen it titled Dance of the Hour. Sometime later, he made a much eerier version. This one, which, as far as I can tell, is also titled Nymphs Dancing to Pan's Flute, is virtually the same composition. In fact, it's so close that I think he probably just traced the original one. And yet, what a difference these colors make. In the first version, the fresh springtime palette gives us a feeling of innocent pleasure, a light, happy feeling. Sure, there is some implication of sexuality, as there always is anytime we have an artwork devoted to Pan and the Nymphs. They are, after all, ancient Greek symbols of lust and the fertility of nature. But here lust is depicted as a natural, joyous thing, a celebration of life. It recalls Matisse's depictions of the joy of life and the dance, which were probably made around the same time, though obviously Tomanek is working in a much more traditional style. Yet, in this painting, the idea of lust seems to take on connotations it would have during the medieval Christian era. It has become a dark, sinful thing, a threatening, frightening, powerful lust that might overwhelm us at any moment if we let our guard down. Or, at least, that is one possible interpretation. Tomanek does not necessarily force this interpretation on us, as would be the case if he had transformed Pan into the devil and the nymphs into a coven of witches. Indeed, this is precisely what happened to the iconography around Pan and the nymphs as the ancient Greco-Roman culture crumbled and a new religious paradigm sprung up, that of early Christianity. I would love to make a whole video dedicated to this topic, how Pan became the devil. If you'd like to see that video, leave a comment below and let me know. However, as I said, Tomanek is not necessarily recasting his characters as evil in this version of the painting, though the darkness and red colors do give off a more menacing feel. I think what he's doing is indicating the dark side of sexuality without necessarily making a comment on it as to whether it's good or evil. You can feel a destructive potentiality here. Look at the wild brushstrokes, even more ferociously applied than in his first version, which was already very brushy and what you might call painterly. See the way the little sparks and embers of the fire rise into the night. Where might they land, and what other fires might they ignite? What you actually see here holds twofold suggestions. On one hand, you can see the reasons why the Christian tradition warns us against unbridled sexuality and its sinful potential. On the other hand, there is the excitement and passion of the nighttime, which does not necessarily have to be a bad thing. What a fascinating pair of paintings. And yet, if you look on the internet for Joseph Tomanek, you'll find several other versions in addition to these two. That got me questioning just how many versions are there. I found this one and thought, oh, he must have made a third version with smoother brushwork. That's interesting. But then, on closer inspection, I found that it has these strange patterns in the close-up view, which to me seems to indicate that these are AI-generated images. So I'm assuming this is actually an AI image that someone made based on Tomanek's original. Look at the dark shadows in that eye as well. It's kind of like too dark, so I feel like it's that uncanny valley some people speak about. Here's a darker version that has weird white blobs up in the corner. And another version where there are subtler glimmers of light instead of those white blobs. Now, in the version that is obviously AI, there seems to be no glimmers of light in the sky. Both of the versions that seem to have light in the sky are too pixelated for me to zoom in on to check for that AI swirly pattern. So what I'm actually starting to think is maybe Tomanek did make a third version of this with smoother brushwork, only there are no good photos of it available online, just these blurry ones. And so maybe somebody used AI to try to heal the pixelated spaces so they could enjoy looking at a larger image. That's possible. Now, if that is the truth, if that interpretation happens to be the truth, then I would assume that the smoother brushwork version was made first, and then he later made the other two with looser, more gestural brushwork. That, to me, tends to be the order of things. Usually painters want to try to get as tight as possible, and then oftentimes they'll loosen up after they've sort of achieved a very tight style. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe all of these versions of the one that appears to have tighter brushwork are all AI generated. I have no idea. It's a very interesting question. If you have any insight as to the answers of this, please put it in the comments below. I would love to follow up on this and learn more. Regardless, I think I know why there are so many versions of this floating around on the internet, and it has to do with the commercialization of this artwork. You can get it framed as a print, and if you want it printed out on multiple canvases, here you go. Or maybe you like it better this way, no problem. How about a postcard? Got you covered. Or just a traditional canvas giclée. Oh, I know, you probably want this painting on a sweater, don't you? Done. How about a pillowcase, tote bag, gift bag, shower curtain, round cropped frame? It's all available. This artwork has been fully commodified for your shopping pleasure. The main takeaway for me in all of this is that Joseph Tomanek was not, or we should say is not, a famous artist. There's not that much about him available online other than the brief bio that explains that he was born in Austria-Hungary in what is now the Czech Republic, but that he immigrated to the US at a young age and grew up mostly in Chicago. That seems to be, there's a little bit more than that, but those are sort of the bare bones of his bio, and that seems to be all you can really find about him online. And he seems to have liked Bouguereau a lot. He was probably not too fond of the modern art styles that were starting to gain dominance during his lifetime. I think we can make that inference, although, that is just my inference. We don't really know. But he certainly didn't work in any of the sort of modern styles, or what would have been contemporary back then, the avant-garde styles. He really stuck to a more traditional style, despite, having some sort of looser brushwork. It's debatable as to whether or not that loose brushwork can be called, avant-garde. Maybe with the Impressionists, it was slightly avant-garde, but it certainly wasn't. It didn't start with the Impressionists. We have artists in the Romantic era like Turner being loose with their brushwork. I mean, go back all the way to the Baroque, and Rembrandt was loose with his brushwork. So, yeah, I don't know that it's safe to say that just having loose, kind of painterly, brushy brushstrokes is necessarily avant-garde. Anyway, all of this. The point was just to say that here we have an artist who is, for all intents and purposes, unknown, who made a very appealing artwork that obviously resonates deeply with many people. Because of the internet, images of his artwork have circulated and proliferated without much real knowledge of their provenance. Because the paintings were made long ago and thus are probably far beyond any copyright protections that they may have once had, they are being capitalized on by people who probably don't have that much interest in making sure their images are accurate to the originals. So we are getting these weird permutations, a process now aided by AI. Pretty weird stuff, right? It's a wild west out there in internet land. Now, just in case you are wondering, I probably will not be making a video on Tomanek for my series, Neglected by Art History. That's because even though these two paintings are, in my opinion, absolute masterpieces, most of his work strikes me as just kind of okay. It's not bad, just okay. So I kind of understand why he hasn't gotten that much attention from art historians, and yet it raises an interesting question. If an artist generates just one masterpiece in a repertoire that is otherwise somewhat mediocre, does that artist still deserve a place in art history or not? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I really appreciate it if you do. My channel is not monetized, but I do have a book you can buy, and it's called Thoughts. If you want to find it, just look up Brian D.K. Thoughts on Amazon, but make sure you have books selected when you search Brian D.K. Thoughts, otherwise it won't show up. It has around 150 illustrations. It took me about 10 years to make it, and it really is just a collection of random thoughts, thoughts on many different subjects ranging from mortality, romance, quasi-philosophical issues. It's full of my art, so if you're interested in seeing my own drawings, then there's many examples in this book. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ciao for now.